Coming up, we're diving into the solo career of one of rock's most over-the-top frontmen. Oh, love this guy. See if you can guess who it is. After leaving one of rock's mightiest bands on the planet in 1985, this larger-than-life showman set out to prove he didn't need his former band to make killer rock music. Armed with a supergroup of virtuosos and a stadium-sized ego, he unleashed a string of hits that split fans right down the middle. But no one could deny his charisma and his ability to command the stage. At anyone's. On our latest edition of Short and Sweet, we're going to count down this guy's 3 biggest solo tracks, including a death-defying music video shot in the face of a mountain, a cover song that secretly featured a rock and roll legend, and a track that may have been a declaration of war against his former band. Find out which songs made the cut and really the inside joke that he and his former band were perpetrating amongst albums is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, it's time for Short and Sweet, where we cover a legendary artist or band and their top 3 songs in a flurry. So after years of fronting one of rock's biggest bands on the planet, David Lee Roth was ready to break free and ready for his close-up. We all know the story. By 1985, tensions between Diamond Dave and his Van Halen brothers had reached a point of no return. Creative differences, control issues, the whole 9 yards. The breaking point came, though, when Roth recorded his solo EP, Crazy from the Heat. This is while still actively touring with the band. A lot of people forget that. You can imagine that didn't exactly sit well with DLR's bandmates. But this EP, it was a massive success, particularly with his cover of California Girls. That helped convince David Lee Roth that he could establish a lucrative career outside of Van Halen. He then pushed to adapt that EP into a feature film, and he asked Eddie to write the soundtrack. Eddie said, no way. It was actually a book as well. By the fall of 1985, David Lee Roth officially broke ranks with Van Halen and got to work assembling an all-star lineup to back him up. Guitar virtuoso Steve Vai, bass wizard Billy Sheehan, and powerhouse kitman Greg Bissonette joined forces to become the David Lee Roth Band, a supergroup. In 1986, Roth unleashed Eat 'Em and Smile on the world. The album was a mix of blistering rockers and big production numbers, each infused with Dave's special brand of swagger. Lots of swagger. The record climbed to number 4 on the U.S. charts and it went platinum. Singles like Yankee Rose and Going Crazy showcased Roth's signature vocals and reminded everybody why he was one of rock's great frontmen. 2 years later, in 1988, David Lee Roth's follow-up Skyscraper leaned heavier on the keys and heavy on the pop, something he fought Van Halen on and then did himself. Now, commercially, it was a huge winner. The record peaked at number 6 in the States. It went platinum, and this was in large part to the music video and the massive radio hit Just Like Paradise, which also reached number 6 on the Hot 100. But after the release of Skyscraper, the lineup started to shift. Notably in 1989, Steve Vai departed to chase his own solo career. As the 90s rolled in, things started to cool off big time for David Lee Roth. 1991's A Little Ain't Enough couldn't capture the magic of those first 2 albums. Tastes were changing, of course. In 94, DLR released Your Filthy Little Mouth. This one was a genre-bending effort produced by Nile Rodgers. And the album tackled heavier topics, but it didn't connect with audiences. They wanted Diamond Dave. Now, his 98 effort, DLR Band performed modestly, and by that point, Dave was exploring other ventures. Though his solo star dimmed as the 90s wore on, his 80s solo run was epic. Diamond Dave showed that he could be a rock icon with or without Van Halen, at least for the first 2 albums. Here are my David Lee Roth picks, though. All right, coming in at number 3, it's DLR's wild take on the Beach Boys' California Girls. Come on, it's a classic. So let's back this thing up for a little perspective to 1984, December of 84. Like I said before, Roth was still officially a member of Van Halen when he dropped his first solo EP, Crazy from the Heat. A lot of people forget that in history. The lead single, California Girls, it exploded. It reached number 3 on the Hot 100. Number 3 was big. They just had their biggest hit, Van Halen, with the number 1 hit Jump, but this was their second biggest hit that anybody from that band had had at this point. This actually matches the original peak of California Girls by the Beach Boys back in 1965 as well. However, the band, especially Eddie, he saw this release as Dave putting himself first. While Van Halen was supposed to be his priority, Roth was out there building his own brand, and it didn't stop with just the single. Like I said, Dave wanted to turn Crazy from the Heat into a full-on movie. It was a book as well. He even asked Eddie to write the soundtrack, and like I said, man, Eddie was like, hell no. And that was it. That was pretty much it. What a lot of people may not know is that Dave got a real Beach Boy, Carl Wilson, to sing backing vocals on the cover. Joining him was Christopher Cross, of course, the yacht rocker behind Sailing. Sailing takes me away. People hate yacht rock, but hey, he embraces it. Cross explained the whole thing in 2011 when he said, I think what happened was that they really wanted a stamp of approval and validation on doing California Girls. Truth be told, I think they knew I was close to Carl Wilson, and they thought, well, if we get Christopher, then we could get Carl. Cross laughed about it, and he said, they didn't care about me really because they got a Beach Boy. And, you know, they got Christopher Cross, though, as well, one of the greatest voices ever. But if the song was a hit, the music video, man, that took things to a whole other level. One of the biggest of the 80s, the promo for California Girls was pure unfiltered Diamond Dave madness. Excessive in every way imaginable, right? Roth was living his dream as he cast himself as the goofy, smiling tour guide, leading viewers through a hyper-saturated world filled with dressed-down women. It also featured a Twilight Zone-styled opening, love it, and it even had a cameo from Jane Leeves years before she'd hit it big on Frasier.
The unexplainable. They thought they were headed for fun in the sun.
And the most iconic moment to me, that museum sequence with David Lee Roth dancing past all these models that are frozen like mannequins. But make no mistake, Dave was always meant to be the main attraction, which exactly, you know, it's how he saw himself, right? All right, next in at the number 2 spot, I gotta go with the Yankee Rose. In the summer of 1986, David Lee Roth dropped Yankee Rose on the world, and it wasn't just a single, man. It was a declaration of war. Just a few months earlier, Van Halen had released 5150, their first album with new frontman Sammy Hagar, and it was big, right? It went to number 1, went on to sell 6 million copies. Here, Diamond Dave wasn't going to hold anything back. He stepped back and launched an uppercut. He countered with the solo debut, Eat 'Em and Smile, which was an intentional aggressive return to the classic Van Halen sound. He utilized virtuoso guitarist Steve Vai for that extra firepower to great effect. The competition was intense, it was highly publicized, and you know, Van Halen won the commercial victory. But David Lee Roth's release was held by many fans as the spiritual continuation of the band's original rock energy. Yankee Rose was the opening salvo from Roth's solo debut, and it was a not-so-subtle shot across the bow for sure. I mean, Roth was basically saying, you think Eddie's the only guy who can shred? Check out this new guy, the new kid on the block, Steve Vai. Pressure was insane. I mean, Vai himself admitted in a 1986 interview that the whole situation could have been very precarious because, you know, Dave and Eddie were so beloved. Everybody was watching this. Everybody was picking sides. Van Halen fans versus Roth fans. The rock world was split in half, and Yankee Rose was Dave's opening argument in the battle for rock supremacy. Talking about a Yankee Rose. But the song itself, that was a full-blown tribute to the Statue of Liberty. Remember, 1986 was Lady Liberty's 100th anniversary. And there was that massive high-profile renovation and rededication that happened in that summer. The whole country was celebrating it, and David Lee Roth tapped right into that energy with perfect timing and a great song. The lyrics, you know, they're pretty obvious. You got coast to coast, sea to shining sea. There's her flag unfurls, firecrackers, and 4th of July in there. And then Roth takes a swing at the Star-Spangled Banner with the line, so pretty, when her rockets glare, still proving any night that her flag's still there. He even calls her the original good time girl. It's all somehow both patriotic yet cheeky, and David Lee Roth's all in the middle of it. Yankee Rose, that was DLR's proof that he didn't need Van Halen to make killer rock music, right? By opening his album with a track that powerful, you know, complete with Vai's mind-bending guitar wizardry, he was sending a message loud and clear. He was going to be fine without Eddie and the crew. And the name of the album? that was another inside joke. Eat 'Em and Smile, for which many saw Van Halen and Sammy Hagar's answer on their next album called OU812. Anyway, we won't get into that. All right, here we are at this week's short and sweet number one, and I gotta go with Just Like Paradise. The year was 1988, and Diamond Dave was gearing up to release his second solo album, Skyscraper. But this time around, things were gonna sound a whole lot different. The lead single, Just Like Paradise, was nothing what fans really expected. Gone were the dominant shredding guitars that define Eat 'Em and Smile, and instead, Roth cranked up the keyboards, the very instrument he gave Eddie Van Halen so much crap for, and he delivered something closer to pop rock. It was a big gamble. But you know what? I loved it. Did you love it? This was one of my favorite songs of that year. I just loved it. Just Like Paradise shot to number 6 on the Hot 100, and it was a huge hit for him. It was his last big chart appearance. But you know what? This song didn't come together the way you'd expect. There's no jam session with Steve Vai tearing up the fretboard at all. Rather, the whole thing started in the bedroom of keyboardist and co-writer Brett Tuggles. Brett Tuggles sat down at his keyboard and crafted the song's main hook, and then he handed Roth a polished demo on tape. It was as simple as that. And then there was the music video, and that took things to a whole other level. For this one, David Lee Roth strapped on some climbing gear, and he scaled Half Dome in California's Yosemite National Park. I mean, the man was literally hanging off a cliff thousands of feet in the air, all for the sake of rock and roll. He'd done it many, many times. Dangerous Dave. You can see him clinging for his life on the solid rock face of a mountain. But for Dave, it wasn't just a gimmick. The climb was a metaphor for his entire career philosophy. He was always chasing that adrenaline rush, always pushing the boundaries, always looking for that next adventure. Good time Dave. It was whether on a stage or on a mountain face, Roth, he was always all in. Just Like Paradise in his death-defying video proved that he was more than just a singer. He was a showman on every single level. And it really makes me mad. It's something I want to say before I end this short and sweet. When people say that Sammy Hagar was a much better vocalist than Dave, and you know, Sammy Hagar was. He's a better singer. But David Lee Roth is not a bad singer. He's a great singer. I mean, go back and listen to the vocals only on Running with the Devil.
I live my life like there's no tomorrow.
David Lee Roth was pure rock and roll magic. No other frontman is as excessive and in your face as David Lee Roth. I would say if you go with frontman status only, I don't know if you can find a better one who is so acrobatic and so intense. I love David Lee Roth, and I think he is an underrated vocalist. I think he's got a great... When he was at his peak, he was as good as anybody, really. And I know, you know, he's lost a step or two in his voice like everybody does, but those are my top three. I'd like to give you 3 more B-sides. Maybe we'll do a part 2 to this because I think there are 3 other songs that are just as good that I could throw up there. Let's share some memories about DLR. Who do you pick? Sammy Van Halen with David Lee Roth or Van Halen with Sammy Hagar? I love both for different reasons. You know, Eddie Van Halen's part of both, so my vote goes with both of them. But let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.